Dear future pharmacist, no guidelines, good, bad, ugly, and indifferent. Hit subscribe and let's get into it. This Dear Future Pharmacist episode is about testing. More specifically, it is about the NAPLEX. So, to become a licensed pharmacist in the United States, you have to take two tests, an MPJE or a law exam. You take a NAPLEX, and this basically is to prove your competence as a pharmacist. And together, these exams, when you successfully complete them, give you the ability to practice in said state as a pharmacist. Disclaimer: my experience is 10 years old. So this is not necessarily what you should do. This is just what I did. So take what you need, leave what you don't, try what you can. The backstory is that I was extremely emotional when it came time to do my testing to become a pharmacist. That's an understatement. I gained weight, I broke out, I was a hot mess. The entire 4 years of pharmacy school seemed like a piece of cake in comparison to just the thought that I was going to have to take these exams. So let's start there. These exams essentially were like a big roadblock for me. They were standing in front of my future, and I certainly got in my head about it. So don't do that. Landscape has definitely changed. Where we are in present, it's not necessarily the same, I feel, as it was 10 years in the past. So I feel like at that time, if you were not licensed, if you did not get licensed, your options were very limited. Few, zero practically. And that's not entirely true. There were things that you would be able to do. There just weren't a ton of things that you were going to be able to do if you were not a licensed pharmacist. I'm setting like the groundwork for how it was for me back then, so you have an understanding of some of these feelings and the thoughts, and they may not exactly resonate now just because the landscape is different. So I do want to provide that context. So I graduated in May, and I literally studied for 4 months. I studied. I went on a 2-week vacation because I actually graduated on my husband's birthday, which also was Mother's Day, and then graduation day. And so we did a 2-week vacation. We went on some cruises, all of the things. We had a time. Came back from said vacation. It was on and popping. I was studying. So I studied May, June, July. I ended up taking my exam like the 1st of August, and I got all my results and things in toward mid-August. I think on my license or some document I have, it says like August 16th or something like that. I took my law exam first, and the reason that I took my law exam first is because in my state, they were getting ready to change the law exam. So the MPJE was relatively new when I graduated. My state still provided its own law exam where you could sit and take. And so it focused on just the state law, no real federal. It wasn't like a federal heavy exam. It was just the state law. And so they were going to change it to the MPJE, and I didn't want to take the MPJE because all of the study documents that I had and all of the, my colleagues who graduated before me, every resource and everything that they had was for that Virginia State exam. And I remember there was this little red book, and everyone said, if you read that red book and you know everything in that red book, you will pass the exam. And so I just didn't want to go through the hassle of trying to figure out and find resources and all of the things to pass the MPJE. So I quickly studied and took the Virginia law exam, and I passed that. So I took that first, and then I spent the rest of my time just studying for the NAPLEX. And again, the NAPLEX is really the exam of your competency as a pharmacist, clinically as a pharmacist. It gives you the ability to practice clinically. The law exam just is that you know the laws relevant to pharmacy practice in said state. And so together give you the ability to practice. I was very strict. So when we got back from that 2-week vacation, I was very strict and regimented about my schedule. I was Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. in the library. I would drop my daughter off. It was just like school. It was just like work. I would drop my daughter off, to be at the library at 9 a.m. I either took lunch or I bought a lunch, had lunch from 12:30, back to studying until it was time for me to leave at 5 and I went to pick my daughter up. I would study all day, and then after I would finish studying, like whatever, let's say I studied cardiovascular for that day, I would, do the lectures, I would do the reading, I would do the test, and then towards the end of the day, if there were still concepts that I just wasn't understanding, or if there were still questions that I was getting wrong, as I would take the, question bank for that section, I would put them on index cards. I would put the question on index card on the front, and then on the back I would put the answer, and I would put the supporting documentation on it. And I remember I had the index cards at first, but then my friend told me about an app that you could use on your phone, and I have no idea what it is now, and I'm sure they have much better apps than they had then. Actually, I started using the app on my phone, so then when I would go home and it would be family time, because my daughter was she would have been 4 at the time, so if we would go to dinner, or we would take her out to do things, or whatever it was that we were doing, if I was just sitting, I was just going through the index cards. I was reading the concepts over and over again, and that. So advice. And so I'm gonna make a separate video, I think, for the law. Let this just be for NAPLEX, because this could get very lengthy. And then for people who have already taken the NAPLEX many moons ago and they don't need to know this stuff, it might be beneficial to just have the law stuff in another video. So my advice, and this advice is for a P4. Tweak it. It'll be some things you can take from it if you're not a P4, but I'm giving you my real-time P4 advice. What I did, what I didn't do, what I think would have been beneficial, what I feel like would be beneficial for an up-and-coming P4. And so the first thing is to start early. Whatever prep you're going to use, start early with it. At the time, I used RxPrep because that's what the school gave us. I don't think RxPrep is around anymore. I think it got sold, and so now I think it's UWorld. I have no experience with UWorld. I don't know if it's the same as RxPrep. I don't know if it's as good as RxPrep. I don't know. But whatever resource you're going to use, go ahead and have that for that P4 year. Try to commit to, and again, I'm telling you about this, or giving you this advice from RxPrep. I don't know how your prep would be. Our RxPrep was broken down into chapters. So I would try to get through a chapter or two if you are very studious for a week. That will be very, very helpful for you when to be, conquering these chapters each week, because I want to say it was like 52 chapters. It'd be very helpful for you to already have a full run through of these chapters before you start studying. I think you may not think that, but if you could commit to that, it would be very advantageous for you. Go to the test website, understand what the landscape of the test is. Is it adaptive? How is it scored if it provides that information to you? How long do you have to take it? What section or what criteria is it testing on? How are those sections or criteria weighted? That's important for you to know. It's going to help you to develop your study strategy. Rotations. I know at this point you're tired, you feel like you're doing free labor, you feel like it's hard, you're being judged, all of the things. I will most definitely say that I took full advantage of my rotations and my preceptors, because I had really good preceptors who were really good teachers, and they were committed to trying to make sure that I was prepared for the NAPLEX, telling me little things. This is what you see in practice, but this is what would be how you would answer a question on the NAPLEX. So if you find yourself in a situation where you have those really good preceptors, make sure you lean into those preceptors, because it's free. Like, it's like a free tutor there. And a lot of these preceptors are constantly precepting students, or writing scholarly articles and just doing all of the things. And so They have a lot of good, relevant, helpful information, and they can hook you up with previous students from other institutions, or if other students have left behind resources and all of the things. Lean into that if you can, because I know not everybody has a great experience. What I'm going to say next is just going to be dependent on the type of learner you are. I think it's always a good idea to study alone first. And I say that just because if you study alone and you understand what you have, what the subject matter is, then when you go into the group setting, it's more beneficial for you and for the people you're studying with. It's very difficult if you're going to study with a group and it's 5 of you guys and 2 of you guys are very prepared and know the study material, and or just know the material in general, and then everybody else doesn't. Because now, instead of you telling me how you commit to remembering something, or you explaining concepts to me and I'm explaining concepts to you, I'm basically just trying to teach you, and that's not what this is. So study alone first. I think that's good. And then if you are a group studier, then kind of go to the group. If you say no, that doesn't work for me, I am 100% hardcore a group studier. Study in the group. I don't know if they still offer a pre-NAPLEX, but when I was a student, they did offer a pre-NAPLEX. Take that. I took it twice, and I found it really helpful because it kind of showed me what the format of the test was going to be, put me in the mindset of how the questions were going to look. And like I said, I took it twice. The first time I took it, I'm not sure the score was I know the test, I don't think the score is a representation of right and wrong. So that also is very helpful when you take the pre-NAPLEX, to see how you felt about questions versus questions you didn't know, versus what your score is. That's important. First time I scored a 96. The second time I scored, it was an 87. Sorry, I'm looking at my notes. I scored an 87. And then when I actually took the NAPLEX, I scored a 110. So I think that it was, if you're trending well on the pre-NAPLEX, if they still offer it, then you could assume that you would probably trend well when you take the test. Calculations every day. Once upon a time, there was a calculations document that was going around on Student Doctor Network. I printed that packet off. I did that packet every day. I think it was 120 questions, that 120 might be too specifically wrong. It was 100 plus questions. I did every single question every single day. It got to the point, day 1, when I was doing the questions, I struggled through them. By day X, I already was halfway through the math problem before I even finished reading the question. So, calculations every day, because if you don't use it, you lose it. Putting yourself in testing conditions. People underestimate this for all type of testing. I credit this strategy to my father, and it's not like a new strategy, but I really saw him do it when he was studying for the bar. If it is a 1 hour time test, 150 questions, then you want to do 150 questions in 1 hour. No getting up to use the bathroom, no eating, none of the things. You sit, you set a timer, you have the question set, and you do it. Because people underestimate the type of mental strength, I guess is the right word, that it takes to sit and focus in a time, and then you're practicing like answering these questions at a certain pace, because you're not going to be able to spend 10 minutes on every question. So it teaches you how to efficiently answer these questions accurately in a certain amount of time. So if you need to be spending 30 seconds on each question, you want to practice that. Questions. I say this all the time. Material does not change. The material is the material. If the sky is blue, the sky is blue. If 1 + 1 is 2, 1 + 1 is 2. it is not going to change. But the question may change. And so you have to be able to read the question and know this is what they're asking me. And because it's asking me this, this is what the answer is. So if you can expose yourself to as many questions as possible, it's really going to be to your benefit, because they can take one concept and they can just really ask that question so many ways, and you want to make sure that no matter what way you see the question, you're able to answer it correctly. You want to get to a point while you're reading the question, you already know the concept that they're trying to test you on. You need your mind to immediately go to, oh, this is a patient care question, oh, this is a XYZ question. And so you already kind of have an idea of where you're going to be going with this. The concepts on my exam were very simple. I did not feel like the NAPLEX was difficult at all. I felt like it was very, very entry level, in my opinion. It would be things. Now, what it did require was you to have an attention to detail, because if they are giving you labs, you first of all, what I would do is if they gave me like a patient chart or whatever you want to call it, a patient case, male or female. If it's a female and they giving me labs, I'm gonna go see what is her HCG. Is she pregnant? Because if she's pregnant, I want to have my mind, okay, I have a pregnant female. What things should she be taking? What things shouldn't she be taking? What things could she be taking? And then when I get to the actual question, I have this context already in my mind, because it could be as simple as you have a positive HCG. She's on lisinopril. She shouldn't be on lisinopril. We need to DC the lisinopril. I mean, it could be very, very simple. Don't get caught up in the wordiness of things. Don't get caught up if you get to a question and you see like there's just a ton of text and you're like, oh my God, no. Answer the question that it asks you. Pay attention to what they provide you. And if you put the work into the preparation, I am a firm believer, if you can, and not to anybody. Like, you don't have to prove it to your professors, your parents, your spouse. No, it's a internal. It's a self thing. If you know you put the work into it, I truly believe that you pray, you woosah, stay calm, and you just go in there and you get the job done. The next episode of Dear Future Pharmacist, we're going to talk about the law exam, because, as I mentioned before, I did take the Virginia law before they switched over to the MPJE, and that was 10 years ago. But more recently, I have taken an MPJE, and I have thoughts, and I can tell you what I think about the MPJE, what I did to study for the MPJE, and what I would recommend. Hope you enjoyed this episode. Until next time, guys. Bye, Future Pharmacist.